Hello again, I am Theo, and this video is part of Stage 1 of Youth Leadership Training of the European Youth Connection Program. In this video, we're going to talk about facilitators, what they are, what they do, what are their responsibilities, as well as what roles they might take while facilitating a process. So let's start by doing what I always do when I don't know what something is, Googling it.
So the Cambridge Dictionary defines a facilitator as someone who helps a person or organization to do something more easily or find the answer to a problem by discussing things and suggesting ways of doing things. Now, I don't know about you, but that definition doesn't sit right with me. I mean, a business advisor discusses things and makes suggestions. That doesn't mean they're a facilitator. An IT support person discusses with you what your issue is and suggests solutions. Pretty sure they're not a facilitator either. So, here's the definition that we prefer that definitely wasn't the next result on Google. A facilitator is a person who helps to guide a group through a structured process in order to achieve specific goals or outcomes. Now, let's break that definition down and see what it actually means. Facilitators work one-to-many rather than one-to-one, meaning that in comparison to our previous examples of business advisor and IT support who address a singular entity, an organization or person, a facilitator addresses a group of individuals. Of course, there are times where a facilitator will work one-to-one, like when interviewing participants, making arrangements with stakeholders, or providing some individual mentoring, but the bulk of the work is in groups. A facilitator's role is to support the group's process, meaning designing activities, moderating discussions, and offering key questions that will assist the group into the desired outcomes. For example, say that a group is discussing how to raise awareness of EU opportunities amongst young people. Completely random example. It is the facilitator's job to offer questions and lead the discussion towards topics such as which demographics can benefit the most from such opportunities, what form of content has the best impact on these groups, etc. And lastly, but certainly not least, a facilitator's position is neutral when it comes to content. What that means that first of all, the content, the answers, the solutions come from the group, not the facilitator. The facilitator doesn't hold the correct answer and definitely is not always right when it comes to content, not process. In turn, what that means is when those answers and solutions come from the group, a facilitator should not paint them as right or wrong based on their own bias. Of course, this doesn't really apply to a training like this, since the point of a training is to learn from an expert, but often facilitators need to fulfill other roles as well, such as trainer, coach, mentor, and many more. What you need to remember is that essentially a facilitator designs and runs group processes with the aim of making it easy for everyone to contribute and achieve a shared goal. So, from all the things we talked about before, we can define the responsibilities of a facilitator. Obviously, every project and group is different and has different needs and goals, but these are the things that as a facilitator you will pretty much always have to do. Design and organize an effective group process that helps create the desired outcome or goal. The plan for this group process is most often in the form of an agenda. Solicit input from stakeholders, team members, and subject matter experts in order to create an effective process that is fit for purpose. Guide discussions, encouraging participation and using active listening to ensure that everyone in the group is heard. Manage group dynamics, creating a sense of psychological safety and facilitating effective, inclusive collaboration amongst the group. Encourage the group in generating their own ideas, coming up with solutions and taking shared responsibility for a common goal. Report back to stakeholders after the activity to support further action and create momentum. And as we discussed before, maintain neutrality and impartiality through the whole process. I understand that it might sound like a lot, but what it boils down to is figuring out what needs to be achieved, designing a way for it to be achieved, and creating a safe space where everyone can contribute to achieving it. Now that we have discussed what the facilitator is responsible for, let's talk about how they do it. Most often, the way to achieve all of the previously mentioned objectives is by switching roles according to the situation in order to get certain outcomes. Some of those roles are facilitator as a guide. As a guide, it's your responsibility to know the steps of the process that the group will execute from beginning to end. You must carefully guide the participants through each of the steps. In order to do that, you must understand the purpose of the objectives of the session, clearly communicate the steps of the process to the group, monitor progress and adjust the pace as needed, and keep the group focused and on track. As a task master, you're responsible for keeping the session on track. And the way to do that is by setting clear expectations and goals for the session, monitoring time and pacing to ensure the completion of objectives, redirecting discussion if it goes off topic or becomes irrelevant, and maintaining a consistent level of detail throughout the session. As a motivator, you must ignite a fire within the group, establish momentum, and keep the pace. Things that might help achieve that are starting with a rousing opening statement that sets up the tone for the session, or using energizers and icebreakers to keep the energy level high, encouraging participation and engagement from all members, and keeping the momentum going with timely breaks and refreshments. As a praiser, you should praise participants for their effort, progress, and results. In order to do that, you could recognize and acknowledge contributions from all members, use specific examples to illustrate the impact of participants' contributions, reinforce positive behavior with positive feedback, and of course, use praise to build confidence and motivation. As a clairvoyant, you must watch carefully for signs of potential strain, weariness, aggravation, and disempowerment, and respond in advance to avoid dysfunctional behavior. Some things to help with that are reading body language and facial expressions to gauge participants' engagement and energy levels, monitor discussions for signs of disengagement or conflict, anticipate potential challenges and plan accordingly, and use humor and levity to diffuse tensions and keep the mood positive. As a facilitator, you must use active listening to manage group discussions and ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. In order to do that, you should listen carefully to the discussion, formulate questions that challenge the group and manage the discussion effectively, use active listening skills such as clarifying, summarizing, and paraphrasing to ensure understanding, and remain neutral and avoid jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. As a bridge builder, you must create and maintain a safe and open environment for sharing ideas. To achieve that, consider building rapport and trust with participants, encouraging active listening and respect for diverse opinions, using similarities to establish common ground and build consensus, and addressing conflicts and disagreements constructively. As a peacemaker, you must quickly step in, re-establish order, and direct the group towards a constructive resolution in the case of confrontation. In order to do that, you should stay calm and composed in the face of conflict, identify the root cause of the conflict and address it directly, encourage open and respectful communication, and use active listening to diffuse tension and find common ground. As you can see, as a facilitator, there are multiple hats that you're called to wear depending on the situation, and often you have to wear multiple ones at the same time. Thankfully, they are hats that apply and can be practiced in our day-to-day lives, such as when we are motivating our friends and family to achieve their goals, or hosting a board game night, just to give a few examples. Moving on to a subject that I personally find really important, especially when it comes to facilitators in non-formal education settings like youth exchanges. The differences between a facilitator and a teacher. First off, teachers are experts in a particular field responsible for imparting information to their students. Facilitators concentrate on the learning process. They are there to encourage collaboration and self-learning. Teachers are more focused on delivering content, whereas facilitators stimulate discussions, ask questions to get the group thinking, and encourage peer-to-peer communication. Teachers decide how a class learns. Typically, that is through reading, listening, and remembering information. Conversely, it is the job of a facilitator to help students identify different ways of learning that work for them. Teaching is centered on learning concepts and theories, versus facilitation, which focuses on experiences that students are then encouraged to connect to theories that they've been taught. Teaching concentrates on the transmission of information to individuals, where facilitation is more about group dynamics and working together. Finally, as a teacher, you expect your students to follow instructions, take information on board, and do the work that you've set. As a facilitator, you want your students to take responsibility for their own learning and contribute to the group sessions. Look, I'm not trying to say that teachers are bad and facilitators are good, it's different structures of learning. It's just a coincidence that I'm a facilitator even though I come from a family of teachers. To close off, let's talk a bit about facilitation styles. You can think of facilitation styles as the general means or mentality you use in order to achieve the desired outcomes. Let's start with non-directive facilitation. Non-directive facilitation takes a style of letting things take their course on their own, where the facilitator creates an opportunity for the participants to determine where to go. For example, if during an exchange you have sessions led by participants who hold more expertise on a subject that the group wants to focus on. Just be mindful that not all situations are appropriate or groups are ready for such a style of facilitation, and if applied improperly, you could derail the learning process or create disruptive group dynamics. Moving forward to appreciative facilitation. Appreciative facilitation emphasizes what works well and concentrates on success and achievement. Identifying moments when the group is working at its best helps the facilitator identify and emphasize desired behaviors. Sometimes asking what is going well focuses attention on what is working rather than what is not working. Next is activity facilitation. Activity facilitation focuses the learning process on participating and experiencing activities. To achieve that, each activity needs to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. At the beginning of the activity, discussing the goals and expectations brings everyone on the same page and sets a target for the group to achieve. The middle is where you have the most engagement and action. And finally, at the end of the activity, summarizing it and drawing conclusions creates a strong bond between experience and theory, by connecting the events and actions taken during the activity with the desiring learning outcomes. The observant among you might have noticed that what I just described is a LARP. Group facilitation is a style of facilitation that focuses on group dynamics and establishing a safe environment that allows everyone to participate and contribute. In order to achieve that, you must prioritize participants' interactions and engagement by using methods that set common communication and behavior patterns, like, for example, a social contract. And finally, directive facilitation is a style that focuses on connecting the participant's experience with the desired learning outcome or goal. The facilitator sets the stage before the activity by telling the group what they should learn from it in order to create focus and a reference point. Additionally, by framing the experience, often using stories or metaphors, the facilitator helps the group make sense of it and relate it to their lives outside of the activity. For example, instead of mountain climbing, the group is learning how to maintain focus on their life goals. Or instead of taking care of a potted plant, they are learning how to be more observant and caring in their relationships. Of course, there are a lot more styles of facilitation, either mixes and variations of the above, or completely different, but these are the ones that are a good starting point into settling into your own unique style. Obviously, each style has its own strengths and weaknesses and performs better with certain groups or situations, so even if you have a style that fits your values, personality, and experience, don't be afraid to change it if you're not getting the results you're aiming for. And now that you hopefully know what a facilitator is, I would like to invite you to imagine, in your opinion, the ideal facilitator. Think of it as making a character in a game. What is their background? What roles do they feel most comfortable in? What facilitation style do they prefer? Once you have a vision of what you want them to be, write about them in the Discord channel. Something along the lines of, my ideal facilitator is called John. He is most comfortable being a motivator and a guide since he has a background in children animation. He tends to use appreciative facilitation since he prefers his participants to focus on successes in order to keep a momentum throughout the activities. Have fun and see you soon!